All right, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and we've been going over the PowerPoint presentations for Murox ASP.NET 4.6 with C# 2015 6th edition. And we're in the middle of Chapter 20, How to Authenticate and Authorize Users. And I'm up to page 718. And as mentioned on the page here, in previous versions of ASP.NET, a membership system was used, and it provided authentication for ASP.NET applications. It was forms-based, and it had a profile provider system and controls that allowed you to work fairly seamlessly with a membership system. In many cases, as they say there, all you needed to do was to put these controls on your page, and your application could register and log in users without you having to do really much of anything else, like setting up a database or whatever. But the way that this was set up is it was very hard to customize. Or it was hard to work with custom profile fields. So to respond to this, Microsoft replaced the old membership system with a new ASP.NET identity system. And what you see up on the screen here are some of the main objects that are used by the identity system. And they include OWIN context, which is the OWIN context for the current request, identity DB context, which is an entity framework DB context, identity user, which represents an authenticated user, user store, works with users at the database level, user manager, which accepts a user store and works with the users at an application level, identity store, which represents a role, role store, which works with roles at a database level, role manager, which works with roles at an application level, identity user role, which represents a user that belongs to a role, sign-in manager, which manages sign-in user sign-in operations, sign-in status, which is an enumeration whose values represent the results of a sign-in attempt, identity result, which is the result of an identity operation, and claims identity, which represents a claims-based identity. Well, what this did was it provided benefits that the old system didn't have, such as you can use this system with all of the ASP.NET frameworks, including web forms and MVC, Model View Controller, which we'll discuss in Chapter 25. It's also easier to customize than the membership system. That's the big thing. It uses middleware called OWIN, and you saw that OWIN identifier. That's Open Web Interface for .NET. And OWIN is an open-faced project that defines a standard interface between .NET web servers and web applications. The goal of OWIN, as mentioned on the middle of page 718, is to create lightweight components with as few dependencies on other frameworks as possible. So, those were the benefits. Basically, I just went over them with you. Okay, you've got more control, it's modular, supports things, third-party logins based on OWIN, and it's distributed as a NuGet package. And the advantage in it, and they mention it here, and it's a really good point. One thing about NuGet is when Microsoft comes up with updates, they can basically push them out to the system and deliver, new features and bug fixes faster, and then just have you update by distributing a change onto NuGet. So this is how to get an OWIN context object for the current request. And again, this identity system replaces the membership system. All right. How to create a web application that authenticates users. You can still create a web application that can register and log in users without having to set up a database or write virtually any code. To accomplish this, you can start your application from the web forms template, and the web form template contains a functional authentication system by default. We've looked at this earlier. Now you should know it says that the code here can be complex. The good news is you probably don't need to understand it to use it. In fact, you can use the web forms template without even looking at the code. So, to start a web application, as shown right here, you display the new ASP.NET Project dialog box and select the web forms template. When you do, individual user accounts authentication is selected by default. After you create a web application using the web forms template, it will contain the files and folders that are shown here. Such as there is an account directory that contains several ASPX files that provide for things like registering users, logging users in, etc. In addition, the app underscore start and models directories contain C# files used by the default authentication system. Finally, there is a startup.cs file in the root directory, and that contains C# code that runs when the application first starts. Now, when you start an application from the web forms template, it includes a master page with a bootstrap nav bar. We've seen this before. All right. And the key things that you have here are register and log in. So if I do click the register button, I mean, by default, you're typically not going to be logged in, or you may not be logged in when you start an application up. But if I click a button, I can register. Once I register, then after I've done registering, I can log in. So if I had been grace@yahoo.com, then the register and login after I log in would be replaced with hello with my email address and then a log off option, as they show right here. So again, the master page includes a bootstrap nav bar that contains a login view control. This control displays links that let anonymous users register or log in. If the user is already authenticated, the control displays a link, typically with the user's name or email address or whatever, and a log off link. And it uses the login status control. So when you go in to register a user, it looks like this. When you click the register button, it asks you for an email, a password, and a confirm password. And I could be wrong here, but I believe the email just has to be formatted correctly. In other words, I don't think it has to map to a real email. So if I put hello@goodbye.com or something, it should take it just fine. The password and the confirm password, as you'd guess, have to match. After you do this, by default, you should be redirected to the home page, where again, after you do that and you click the register button, then you'll be able to log in. Which will look like this. Now again, you'll notice I'm not making any excuse for this, but I'm telling you, I'm not going over any of the code in chapters 19, 20, 21, or 22 in any kind of detail. I'm just kind of walking through it, for lack of better words. So to log into an existing user account, you can go into the login page and basically just log in. Now you'll notice there is a Manage ASPX page here on the Forms template. Well, the reason that some of that stuff is important because, for example, with a password, you might want to change it. You might want to have two-factor authentication, where you provide even more authentication. And there's other things that you may want to have. So notice here you can change your password. We've all seen this. We've all done this before at one time or another. I know here at Rankin, typically it's about every couple months they ask us to go in and change our passwords. Might even be more often than that. So if you want to adjust things like password length, the number of login failures that you'll allow, etc., there is a file that you can use that's called the identityconfig.cs file. It exists in the app start directory, and it determines some of the authentication behaviors of the application. All right. Now, I think I'm great for time. Now, I'm at 10 minutes. I know these are short lectures, but I'm going to come back with how to authorize users, which is about the next 6 pages. In fact, let's do that now. Then we'll go and look at the user maintenance application, I believe. In fact, we'll stop it right here. That's fine.